Hi guys, how are you doing? So I couldn't be in class today myself, so I went ahead and recorded the lesson for today. Substitute. As we go, feel free to stop, pause, rewind as necessary along this recording. There will be a couple of spots where I will say, okay, now pause. For example, right now, students, I need you to go ahead and get started on your bell work. Today's bell work, you're going to use your homework from last night. Make sure you have that out. On the back of the paper, you're going to choose one event that you think could have changed the course of history had the outcome been different. For example, if Persia would have won the war instead of Greece. And then explain how do you think it would have been different. I only want to give you a couple of minutes to do this, so please watch the clock. It's only going to take about 3 or 4 minutes. Write me at least 3 sentences. All right? Thanks, guys. Go ahead and pause. All right, so your bell work should now be done and your homework turned in, okay? So if it's not, pause again and turn it in. All right, so your homework's turned in. You are familiar with your the order now of the Persian War. So yesterday we talked about Thermopylae. I'm not going to go over this again because we discussed it yesterday. Your composition notebook should be open to page 53 and 54. We're going to continue in on our Cornell notes. All right, so if you haven't done so already, please get out your composition notebook and open to page 53 and 54 so we can continue our Cornell notes. All right, you should be done. Let me real briefly, though, I know there was at least one class that we didn't quite finish the Battle of Thermopylae. So real brief, let's do a quick review. So just as a reminder, at the Battle of Thermopylae, Xerxes has for the second time invaded Greece. All right, the Persians invade with 200,000 troops and a whole bunch, thousands of warships. The land battle then of this is called Thermopylae. This is where King Leonidas makes his last stand with his 300 troops. Now, what you may not know is that Leonidas originally started out this battle with 7,000 troops from Greek city-states all over Greece. All right, it's not until a traitor showed the Persians a goat path back behind the Spartans that the Spartans realized and the Greeks realized that they were outnumbered and now surrounded. So King Leonidas, being the good leader that he is, goes ahead and sends all the other Greek soldiers home. He says, go home and take care of your city-state. And him, King Leonidas, and 300 of his most loyal and best soldiers stay for a fight to the death, holding off the Persians for as long as possible. So hopefully you remember that from yesterday, and that's a brief overview. If you don't have these notes down, make sure you get them down. If you need to pause here, that would be appropriate. Okay, here we go. So the Battle of Thermopylae was the land portion of this Persian invasion. There's also a water or sea version of this, okay? This is your new chunk in your Cornell notes. So please make sure you have chunked your Cornell notes with a colored highlighter, marker, crayon, whatever, but be sure to make a chunk here. If you need to move on to the next page, of course, that's appropriate. All right, so what happens with the Battle of Salamis? Well, Themistocles is the Navy head or the director of the Athenian Navy, as well as any other boats that the Greeks had gotten together. The first thing he does is he starts by cutting off the Persian supply ships so that they can't continue to get supplies. Then he goes through this whole process where he lures the Persians into this strait, which remember is a narrow channel of water, a narrow piece of water, over by the island of Salamis. All right. when they are there, the Persians' ships, they're too large to move around, too crowded to move around, and the Greeks are smaller and faster, and they ram the Persian ships, breaking them all apart to the point where the Greeks only lose 40 ships, while the Persians lose 300, almost completely destroying the Persian fleet. Well, over a quarter of the total Persian fleet, but almost all of the ones that were there. So you may need to pause so you can get these notes. Next, I'm going to play for you a YouTube video that explains a little bit about the Battle of Salamis.
Now that Thermopylae is over, Xerxes says, well, finally, I can take my army, I can leave Thermopylae, and I can march down south and go destroy Athens. That's his plan. He continues marching south through Greece. When he gets to Athens, the Athenians knew, man, we are way outnumbered. There's no way we're going to defend the city. So they abandoned it, and Xerxes completely destroyed Athens. He destroyed buildings. He stole statues. He burned everything he could find. But right before he came, the Athenians, they didn't want to all die, so they actually ran away. The only people left in the city by the time Xerxes got there were the sick and the elderly who couldn't move. And what the Athenians did is they took the healthy men, women, and children, they loaded them on boats, and they escaped to a nearby island called Salamis. So most of the Athenians are going to live, but their city is destroyed. Now, the leader of Athens at the time, Themistocles, he knew his army was not a match for Xerxes on land, but he was going to try and trick Xerxes into fighting his navy, because we know the Athenians had the best navy at the time, even though they're going to be a little bit outnumbered. So what Themistocles does is he sends his personal bodyguard over to Xerxes, the Persian leader. He says, hey man, check it out, I got a deal for you. The Athenian navy is willing to surrender, but only if you come sail to this island right now. If you do that, I promise you, the Athenian navy will give up, surrender, and will actually join and help fight the rest of this war with you. And Xerxes thinks, well, hey, I beat the Spartans because I listened to a trader who showed me a secret path. Maybe now I should listen to this Athenian trader and I can go capture their navy without even fighting. Sounds like a pretty good plan. Well, it turns out it was actually a trap laid for Xerxes. That island that the Athenians escaped to, Salamis, is right here. The Athenian navy said, well, we can't really just line up out here in the big wide open sea because we're outnumbered. The Athenians only have 400 warships. The Persians have 1,200. So if they line up out there, they know the Persians are going to attack them from the sides. The Persians are going to attack them from behind. It's just not going to work out very well. So they actually try the same strategy that Leonidas and the Spartans used at the Battle of Thermopylae. What they did at the Battle of Salamis, well, the Greeks lined up half of their navy right in a narrow little channel, and they hid the other half around the island where the Persians couldn't see them. And when the Persian ships were approaching from the direction Themistocles knew they would come, the Athenian ships started to back away, almost like they were retreating and going to run. And the reason they did that is they wanted to suck the Persian ships in a little deeper. And when they came out on the other side of those straits, then the Athenian ships attacked them from the sides and from behind. And this was a huge advantage in a naval battle because you didn't fire cannons at the enemy ships. There's no cannons at this time. You just straight up rammed them. And you have a lot better shot coming in from the side and hitting the ship broadside with a ram than you do hitting them head on. So the Persians got tricked, they got sucked into the strait at Salamis, and the Greek navy just kicks their butt. Their ships called triremes had battering rams built on the front, and they used those to drive straight through the Persian ship, and they'd row backwards, and the ship would break in half and sink. So at the end of the day, the Athenian losses number about 40. And that's not men, that number is in ships. The Persians, however, lost a few more. The Persians lost about 300 ships destroyed. So you can see the Athenians really kicked their butt and destroyed, about a quarter of Xerxes' Persian navy.
All right, so there you have it, the Battle of Salamis. Make sure you have these notes down in your Cornell notes. Again, if you're running out of space, go ahead and move on to page 55. That's totally okay. I want to go ahead and move on to the next slide. So if you need to pause it, now would be the time so I can move on. Okay, so here we go. I want to rewind just a second and talk about the burning of Athens. This is going to be a new chunk, but it's just going to be a little chunk. Okay. During the Battle of Salamis, while the Athenian navy is getting all set up, after the Persians have gotten around the Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae, the Persians march south towards Athens. Now, the Athenians don't wait around for the Persians to show up. They know that they're coming. So, like the gentleman said on the video, they load up into ships and they take off. When the Persians show up then, they find the place basically deserted and they set it on fire. We're going to go ahead and move on. After the Persians set Athens on fire, there's this whole Persian army kind of just hanging out on the Greek peninsula, mainland peninsula. It's not until the next year that we see the last battle that we're going to talk about, and that's Plataea. It occurs in 790, and at this point, the Greeks about have the same amount of soldiers as the Persians, about 100,000 each. The Greeks, however, have spent the year working on better weapons, better armor, and are more prepared to battle the Persians. And the Greeks, they come out victorious. They then chase the Persians to try to get them out of their Greek colonies and the Greek city-states. They free Anatolia from Persian rule, which hopefully Anatolia sounds familiar. Remember, this is the original city-state before Marathon that asked the Athenians for help, which gets Darius all upset in the first place. So you can flip back to your notes to look at Anatolia again. The Greeks and the Persians continue battling it out until finally in 449, Persia's just too weak. They just stop fighting back and the Greeks leave. It's not until the Persian Empire becomes weaker and weaker and weaker until 300 BC when Alexander the Great takes over the empire. So this is all for today. I need you to make sure that you chunk your notes and that you get all the notes that you need. I want you to spend the rest of the period today doing your interactions with your notes. That's highlighting, circling important words, starring potential test questions, going back through, making sure each chunk has at least one question associated with it in the questions column. You also need to go back through and make sure that your summary on every page answers those questions. So I would start off with the questions, then go into the interactions, and then do the summary. Don't forget, you can look at how to do Cornell Notes interactions on page 2 and 3 in your composition notebook. This needs to be a silent, individual activity. Also, if you still need to AR test, make sure that's done by the end of the day today. And I will see you all on Monday. Have a good weekend.